I'm Jonathan Kay. I'm chair of the Council of the Faculty of Clinical Informatics. I'm sure that some of you have been to webinars before and some haven't. We'll make this available afterwards. The chat is up and running, and I'm delighted to welcome Mark Bailey, who's going to talk to us about robotic process automation, reclaim your day through automation. But let me tell you a little bit of background. Mark originally worked in chemistry and in pharmaceutical chemistry, then came to medicine, now works as a specialty doctor. This bit might interest some of you, 50% clinical and 50% in clinical informatics. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if some of today's discussion moved into how you manage sort of career, portfolio career, things to do, things to avoid. I know this affects lots of people in the faculty about how to shuffle all of these and how to have a successful portfolio career, including clinical informatics. This is also a continuation of a discussion for which read argument that's been taking place in discourse about robotic process automation. So let's keep it lively. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat as it comes in and asking questions, but I may invite people to join in if that seems appropriate later. So thank you very much for taking this on, Mark, and please tell us about robotic process automation.
Jonathan, many thanks for that. Right, I'm just going to try and share the screen. Let me know if it works. Right, can you see my slides?
I can.
Okay, fantastic. Hopefully everyone else can. Yes, Jonathan, many thanks for that introduction. And yes, I can talk about how I've ended up doing 50% clinical, 50% informatician work, and also about RPA and interoperability discussions, lively discussions we had on the forums on the Digital Health Network. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about robotic process automation and how I've used that within our trust to speed up the daily routine tasks. I've been using a open source program called AutoHotkey and created a program called Quick-Spiritum, and I put it onto GitHub, so if other people want to use it within their trusts or collaborate or whatever, you can go there and download the repo. And as Jonathan kindly said, 50% specialty doctor in respiratory medicine, 50% clinical informatician, more specifically a clinician who codes. I have no formal training in computer sciences, though I've been very interested in computer sciences pretty much all my life. I remember playing on my father's Apple II, which we were living in Hong Kong at the time, and it was something off the black market, so we lovingly called it a crapple. I've been a very massive fan of Nintendo games all of my life, but I had a lot less time for that at the moment. In my first degree in chemistry, the first year, I did computer sciences modules, so I was doing looking at C++ Prolog and object-oriented programming. Going back to my father, I think he's pushed me to actually do most of this. He bought me an Arduino back in 2013, an Arduino Uno, and I built my own dawn and dusk lamp with relaxing music. And then with the Leonardo and Zero, I've been building a boiler and lightning automation system, which detects when your mobile phone's at home and will turn the heating on or off, depending if you're home or not. And I've also been coding in Python, mainly to do with the Arduino Yun, which is basically Arduino Leonardo Atmel microchip alongside an open write embedded Linux system, and you can write codes in Python and that to communicate between the two systems. Written backup programs, built my own computer, and also been using Django for the sort of the web frame side of the home automation system. That's before I started medicine, or actually during medicine, but outside of medical work. And this started in 2017. I started actually using the knowledge I had from computer sciences and using it at work. So I built a Microsoft Access database and done all the coding and Visual Basics for applications, so VBA. And from that, we wanted to link the Microsoft Access database to other clinical systems. And so I want to do that via RPA, Robotic Process Automation. And a good program and I'll talk a bit more about this for this, is AutoHotkey, and we've all incorporated that and linked it all up with the database. To get some more functionality, which I couldn't get with AutoHotkey, I've written code in Python, used machine learning to look at referrals and trying to sift through them to see which ones needs to be seen urgently or not. And my next project is to rebuild the Microsoft Access database because of Microsoft Office 360 coming in and changes from that in October. Microsoft Access won't be available within the Office package. So we need to either get standalone Access programs or build again from scratch. And I'm hoping to do this in open source Django and Postgres SQL. And that's something I'm looking into at the moment and building on. So, robotic process automation. The history of this, it sort of came into being in the late 1990s, early 2000s. Predecessors that were needed before RPA became available was screen scraping, desktop macros, workflow automation management tools, and artificial intelligence. Though I'll say that the last one, artificial intelligence, is not needed so much in pure RPA, but I'll have a chat about that in a sec. So, where are the robots? There's no physical robots, so don't worry about that. But there are software bots that basically control or sort of artificially control your keyboard and mouse. They type in on the keyboard or move the mouse around and click the mouse just like a human would. And RPA interfaces with a clinical program or any program using the graphical user interface, what you see on the screen. You'll click on buttons, enter text in fields, and so on. And pure RPA doesn't use the backdoor routes like application programming interfaces, APIs, though I've done a mixture of APIs and RPA to get the functionality I want for the clinical systems we have in our trust. Types of RPA loosely can be categorized as unattended RPA. So this is something that runs in the background or on a virtual desktop. So something that we have for this in this area is a nightly run where the system opens up the lab system and searches for new results from a list of patients. And for any abnormal results, these are emailed to the appropriate clinician. So we're doing this for tuberculosis sputum samples, for example, tuberculosis results, X-rays, and so on, and also our bronchiectasis patients. And the thing I'm going to talk about more today is the attended RPA. So this is where basically you hit a button on your keyboard, a shortcut, a hotkey, and this automates a routine task that you would normally do on your desktop. Or you can have a hybrid of the above. And there's another subcategory of hyper automation, which uses RPA with machine learning. So you could, for example, read through new investigations using natural language processing and flag up the results which are abnormal to the probe clinician. Another interesting area, which I've seen up in Manchester, is where you can try, at least, and quite successfully predict the length of stay and the service needs of a patient arriving in an ambulance. And based on their background, their age, and a few other criteria, you can send the patient to the most appropriate hospital in a trust. And I've recently seen some online discussion about how here in Gloucestershire, we want to sort of work with NHS X Skuntworks to actually implement something locally as well, which is very interesting stuff. And I'll keep an eye out for that. Now, uses of RPA. As Jonathan pointed out, there's a lot of discussion about RPA, the good side of it, the bad side of it. And you can discuss at length both sides, and I'm happy to discuss at the end of this talk anything about that. And it is a means of interoperability. So for those of you that don't know what interoperability is, it's basically getting one system to talk to another system. And normally you want this to be happening in the background. You don't have to think about it. But if you've got a program that only has a graphical user interface, sometimes the only way to communicate with it is through the screen. But if you want to see the discussions, the very lively discussions you had, you can go to the Discourse digitalhealth.net website. So RPA should be used for undertaking mundane and error-prone tasks. It can speed up cumbersome and lengthy processes. And interestingly, an NHS X survey, which questioned 94 hospitals, showed that 50 hospitals were using or experimenting with RPA, and you can use the link below to have a look at that. And interesting, go back to my Nintendo days, RPA can be used to control video games. This is via it's got a different abbreviation called TAS, Tool Assisted Speed Runs. So again, we used to play loads, this Mario 64, and I spent days, weeks, years playing that. Never got to the end, but with the RPA TAS system, it can be done in 4 minutes and 20. You can look at the YouTube video if you want to see how they've done that as well. Right, so how does it work? There's 3 main ways that I think of anyway when I'm building an RPA script. The first one is move the mouse and click at these coordinates, X coordinates, Y coordinates. So it doesn't really know what's there, it's just moving the mouse and clicking. And the second one is the script will look at the screen and it will try and find a picture that you have of a button or a field that you've saved on somewhere on the hard drive. And if it finds it, it will move the mouse there and click it. And that's okay method, and sometimes you have to use this method. Specifically with Citrix sessions, I'll have a chat about that in a second. And the third method is actually finding the controls, so that's the button or field's name, the Windows operating system's name for it. And you can do this using many different softwares, but I use Windows Spy, which is part of AutoHotkey, open source. And basically say, send a command to this control that you're typing something or clicking there, and it will do that. It's very good, it's very robust, and that's the best way to do it. But if you have a Citrix session, like I said before, the way that works is basically Citrix displays a picture for you. There's no real controls, it's a video, so moving pictures. And so there's no names you can get for the controls, or most of the time there's no names, sometimes you can get them. So you have to use method 2 to find a picture of the button or the field that you want to use to click on that and type in and so on. So workflow. This is mainly in code. To start with, I should mention what the 2 colons mean. So AutoHotkey, as the name implies, has hotkeys within it, shortcuts. And if you have a key on the keyboard, so F1, so that's your function keys at the top, followed by 2 colons, that means this is a hotkey, or what follows is a hotkey. So if I press F1, it will open up Google, and then in following examples from the previous slide, it will move the mouse to X value 54, Y value 124, and then click. So there's not much intelligence in there. It's not really knowing what it's clicking at. The button that you might want to click at that point is probably moved. If you've moved the screen, moved the window, or someone's updated the Google web page. So F2, if you press F2, the hotkey F2, in this example, it will open up Word. It will look for an image called a picture file, and I've got it in BMP. I think that's the best format for doing this with AutoHotkey. And if it finds it, you'll get XY values, and you can then move the mouse to the XY values and then click, and then the return stops the script there. And with the F3 hotkey, this will run Notepad, and this is the smart bit. It sends to the control, it sends, this is a line of text in the Notepad, and then the Enter key, and it sends it to the control called Edit1. Now in Notepad, Edit1 is the big white space that you type in. So if the Notepad's opened and it's minimized or it's hidden behind another window, using the third method will always get the text there because you're sending it via the operating system kernel rather than through some other method like finding a picture or just clicking in a certain area and typing. And you can have nice graphical implementations of the above stuff. You can have think flowcharts and boxes that connect to one another as well, which I've seen in the commercial versions of RPA. So which RPA solution to use? Well, there's many solutions out there. Commercial ones are UiPath, and I've watched quite a few of their videos about how their systems work, and it looks very interesting. Of course, we haven't had the budget really to pay for that. And there's also Automation Anywhere, there's Blue Prism, and Microsoft Power Automate, which we use in the trust. Interestingly, this was formerly a program called Win Automation by Softomotive. Microsoft bought that. And then there's lots of open source solutions. So there's AutoHotkey, which I've been talking about, and I'll talk about a bit more. RPA for Python. I think there's 3 or more libraries for Python for doing RPA, but one of them is called RPA for Python. And then UI Vision. which is a desktop and a web browser-based RPA solution. I've used it a bit myself. Sharp learning curve again, and I did not get along with it that well. So the choice of RPA that I used, as I already previously mentioned, is AutoHotkey. Now, why is that? Well, it's actually already available in our trust. I don't know why, it was just already available, but maybe someone else was doing some RPA in the trust, maybe on the clinical, non-clinical side, sort of in the office side, or business intelligence, I'm not sure. But it was easily available via the Trust Software Center, and it didn't need any admin rights to install. So anyone can quickly install it onto any computer where they want to use this. And actually, after using it, I found out that it has a fantastic active community online. And you can find the answer to basically any question in the documentation pages or in the forum, which I have many, many times. I found most of the answers I needed straight away from other people that have asked questions, or I typed in my own questions and quite quickly got really good answers. So I would highly recommend AutoHotkey and getting involved with that. Now, AutoHotkey, a little history. It's a fork of AutoIt after Chris Mallett wanted to include the hotkeys, so the F1, F2 : code that I showed you earlier. Its first beta came into existence in 2003. It became officially known as AutoHotkey in 2012, and it's an open source scripting language for Windows only, unfortunately. I would love to use it on my Mac, which I'm using right now to give this presentation, to do things like logging onto our Sidetrick session for the trust to do working from home, but I might have to use RPA for Python for that, and I'll get around to that at some point. It does have some strange syntax. Some of you might say this is not that strange, but it looks like it's grabbed a few things from different languages. So there's the colon and equal sign instead of the equal sign. You can use both, but they give you different results. So use the colon equal sign to get the results you normally get in other scripting programming languages. If statements need brackets, which you see in C++, but Python you don't. And then percentage signs around variables for certain functions and functionalities. So percentage sign, variable name, percentage sign, and you do not need to initialize variables, which I find after trying to learn how to do program myself from scratch, that you might run into problems if you haven't initialized your variables properly further down the line in your code. So I like to initialize everything, even if you don't have to. So why did I get into RPA? Interoperability is the age-old question of interoperability. It always has been, always will be, and we've been speaking about it for decades in the NHS. Basically, we had built a Microsoft Access database, as I said. We've called it Spiritum, which is Latin for breathe, which we thought was appropriate considering I work in the respiratory department. And we built this for our sleep service, and my subspecialty is sleep medicine, obstructive sleep apnea, hypopnea syndrome medicine. And I was helping doing reporting sleep studies and creating reports, sending them off, and other parts of the whole service. So we wanted to build a database that controlled all of the pathway and automated things and documented things and so on. Now, part of analyzing and reporting sleep studies, you needed to create letters and then put those letters into our trust letter system. And this is quite tedious, repetitive work, very similar formats in most of the letters, apart from changing some of the demographics or the sleep study results. So very little needed to change between the letters, but it was very repetitive, very tedious work. And so I thought this was ideal for RPA. And after the first wave of COVID back in April 2020, I had COVID myself just before that as well. So I was recovering from COVID, but I had a bit of time. There was a bit more time on the wards because, as most clinicians will know, we had all the clinics' outpatient work was stopped. So once the inpatient work was slowing down, there was time to do other things. I had time to sit down and learn how to use AutoHotkey. So I built some functionality, initially the letter building functionality into the database, and other people in my department had heard about what the database could do with RPA. So then we started building other functionalities in there. So we've got in web scraping for getting investigation results, like I mentioned before, and then reading those results and sending them off to the appropriate clinician. It can, for the sleep service part of it, it can retrieve referrals, PDFs, and outcome these referrals on our PAS system, our patient administration system. Outcome clinics, automate the creation and sending of requests, open up other clinical programs and search for data and so on and so on. So I built RPA into our Spiritum database, but I had an idea. I think it was in November or December last year, and I had a chat with my educational supervisor about this idea. How about if we built a standalone program outside of Microsoft Access that could automate tasks that we do every day in clinical work? And he liked the idea, and so I started working on that. And so from the Spiritum database, I built this standalone program called Quick Spiritum, or QS for short. So what does Quick Spiritum do? Well, it searches for patient data and results. So, for example, get some blood results for you, get your most recent letter from the letter system, get a chest x-ray up, and so on. It can also create and send requests and referrals. Instead of stuff you have to do on paper and get them scanned or get them posted, it will actually do this electronically. Specifically, it has a Word document, fills in the Word document, makes a PDF out of that, sends it off by email. So it takes a couple of seconds and it's done. And how it works, I thought I'll utilize those F keys at the top of your keyboard, which people don't seem to use that much anymore, except F5 to refresh your web browser and F1 to get help. So I reutilize them for running functionality. So you press an F key and Quick Spiritum would copy a hospital number off the screen that you've highlighted, or it'll open up in a dialog box, let you put in the hospital number, MRN at Al Trust, and then it will start up the required clinical system. You'll enter your credentials, and then it'll click on all the buttons that you need to get to the information you need. And I'd built it for quite a few different versions of our clinical systems, and I found that it reduced both the time and the number of keystrokes and mouth movements you needed by the user. So in comparison, I looked at, I think there's about 9 systems that it controls. Manually, you average around 11 clicks or keystrokes, and that's not counting you entering your username and password. So 11 at a minimum, plus whatever you have for your credentials. Where with RPA, once it's learned your credentials, and you only need to do this once, then you just highlight your hospital number, or highlight your hospital number, click an F button, and that's it. It's off it goes. So a minimum number of clicks and keystrokes can be 2 with this. And to reassure you that your credentials are safe, they're saved in the Windows Credential Manager. So I think it's probably best to show you what it does rather than just talk about it. So I've made a little video of me manually with RPA opening our letter system, Infoflex, searching for patients, searching for the most recent letter, and timing this. And so I'll show you that now. There's going to be some black boxes on the screen because I'm covering up patient-sensitive information. It starts up with a notepad with an MRN in the top left corner, so you can see a little black box in the top left corner, and then it will run. So I'll show you the manual version first. So I'm copying the MRN, the hospital number, and going down to Infoflex. I'm opening up Infoflex, typing my credentials. Now, I'm a slow typist, I admit this. I'm going as fast as I can. Last digit there you go. Clicking on that button, clicking on the search button when it appears, trying to get the mouse as near to it as I can, and then pasting in the hospital number with Control V, clicking on the letter. Boom, there's a letter. So that was 29.3 seconds. Okay, not that bad. Right, let's see that done, but with RPA. So with what I'm going to do now is select the MRN, so you won't be able to see it because it's behind a black box, but select it with the mouse, and then I'm going to press F4 on the keyboard. So it's entered the credentials, instantaneous. Clicked on that big button there. It's going to click on the find button at the top. It's going to paste in the hospital number. It's going to scroll down quickly to the letter, and boom, there's a letter. So 19.6 seconds. All right, the results. Manual, 29.3 seconds. RPA, 19.6 seconds. Time difference, 9.7 seconds. Hence, 33% faster with automation. So, QuickSpiritum can control a few systems, as I said before, and I wanted to do a quality improvement project with this. So I asked 7 clinicians in our trust in initial pilot, and I'm going to get more. And I built a program within QuickSpiritum that will ask the clinician to search for this data in a certain system and get some data and then input it back into QuickSpiritum, and it will time how long that took, both manually and with the use of RPA. So I did this in our electronic patient record system Sunrise, which is a Citrix system. So that had to use the picture finding rather than the control names. Track Care, which is our patient administration system. PaxOut imaging system, blood results system, lung function test results, and our request system, ICE. So it was very nice of these clinicians to help me get this data, and the data that I got showed that an average time saved for opening a program, entering your credentials, and searching for patient data was 23.1 seconds. And the average time saved for searching for patient data in an already open program was 7.4 seconds. Okay, well, that's nice and all, but so what? Well, if you do a thought experiment on this, we can try and see how much time it could save in a sort of bigger picture way. So let's say a hospital doctor sees 20 patients per day. Now, I know this is a slight underestimate, or maybe a gross underestimate, depends what you do. But let's start with lower numbers, so you've got a ballpark figure. They need to look up the patient's observations, and now we have Sunrise EPR, that would be electronic. Just a year ago, this was all paper-based, but anyway, it's all electronic, let's go with that. So you need to look up observations, bloods, imaging, and letters for each patient as a minimum. And, you know, it's normally more than this because you need to look up GP records, endoscopy, bronchoscopy results, and so on. So 4 systems you need to look up for each patient. Let's say they only need to open a program once per clinical session, so once per PA. So that's once in the morning and once in the afternoon. But of course, we all know that realistically, that's going to be 5, 10, 15 times that you need to actually log into a program because the sessions time out, or you leave your computer, you go and see a patient, you come back and someone else is using your computer, you need to log on to another one and log in again and so on. So there's a lot of time wasted with all that. Now, so for a single doctor, the time saved per day using RPA versus manual is, bear with me on the maths here, but from scratch, 23.1 seconds. So as I mentioned from the quality improvement program, 23.1 seconds when you're opening it from scratch, opening 4 systems for 2 patients, 1 per clinical session in the day. Plus, if the program's already open, it's 7.4 seconds saved times 4 systems times 18 patients remaining from the 20 patients you're seeing in the day. Okay, so you save 12 minutes per doctor per day. Barely enough time to make a cup of tea, but 12 minutes per doctor per day. Now, if you start looking at the whole trusts, now we're a 900 plus bed trust across 2 sites. We have 800 doctors. So if you start thinking about how much time this could save if each doctor used the QuickSpiritum software to do their daily clinical work. If you take 12 minutes times 5 days in a week, average 42 weeks in a year. So if you take into account annual leave and study leave and so on, times the 800 doctors in the trust. Now I did this math, I had to check this math several times because I wasn't, I was quite surprised by the result, but it's 1,400 working days saved. I did check this many times. It's 1,400 working days saved. Quite a lot, I would say. Let's look at it from another angle. I know our managers like to look at things in terms of money. So financially, let's say the average doctor's annual pay is 50K. So that's £192 per day. So the cost saving for the hospital, if everyone used QuickSpiritum, is 1,400 days times £192, which is £250,000 per year. And that's with all the sort of lower numbers. I was saying you're seeing 20 patients a day, you only open the system twice per day. and so on. So I think it could be more than this, but interesting number nonetheless. Right, back to QuickSpiritum and its functionality. It can open up other programs as well. So it can open up the Digidictate software and enter your hospital number and then get things rolling a bit quicker that way. Our sleep study software, Nocturnal, and it can do requests. So it can do PET-CT requests, lung function requests, and bronchoscopy requests, which, as I mentioned before, were paper-based, but now they're creating PDFs and sending them by email straight to the appropriate department instead of going via snail mail or fax or having to be scanned and then emailed. We can also do referrals for the local healthy lifestyle Gloucestershire team for our weight, smoking, alcohol services, the sleep station referrals, which is a national service for insomnia patients. And recent work, which I've been speaking about on the Discourse Forum a couple of months ago, is connecting up to the gov.uk notification website. So we can actually send patients SMS messages, emails, and letters of videos, so patient information videos that we have links for. We want the patient to watch just to educate them on their disease. So, for example, good inhaler technique for asthma, how to manage an exacerbation of their COPD, and so on. Now, future work. I'd like to recruit more clinicians to undertake time tasks of the seven clinicians I had with the previous pilot, just to get better and more accurate data of how much time is saved for RPA. I'd like to publish the above work so people can, find out about this and use it themselves. And what the next step I'm doing at the moment is digitizing our lung cancer pathway, and I want to incorporate these RPA solutions into this new pathway, where we want to digitize and automate from referral to treatment. There's lots of evidence out there that shows if you can speed up the treatment times from referral, you get better outcomes. So time saved is life saved. Right, so get using, get involved. If you're interested in this, you can go to GitHub and you can clone the repro. My username is Cotswolds Maker. The username is to do with my other hobbies, building things out of wood and metal in my man's cave. And you can email me at mark.bailey5@nhs.net. Twitter, I'm at Cotswolds Maker again. And if people are interested enough, I would be very interested myself in doing some online teaching on AutoHotkey or RPA in general, and see if the QuickSpiritum or maybe solutions from scratch could be built to other trusts or surgeries to help with their automation and their daily clinical work. Right, thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Mark. Absolutely great talk and lots of details. The setting's obviously really important. We can go back to Atul Gawande's paper about why people hate EPRs, the ridiculous data burdens on, in this case, I think predominantly junior doctors carrying out those important repetitive tasks. Marcus Bourne, David Hancock, and I did Digital Health Unplugged on why computerization itself seems to bring extra burden on junior doctors.
Yeah.
That takes us to the weak assertion. That is that by using these techniques, you can do a lot better than what was in front of people before. Yeah, I don't think that one's up for debate. You've done the calculations and you're showing that. But there's something else going on here. So my closest connection to this in programming is in HyperTalk, which has this very interesting control of screen elements. But in Oxford with Dave Nurse about 20 years ago, we did something very similar, which was to identify all the different systems that junior doctors repeatedly used and to put a browser in front of them. And we did the joining up at the primitive level, the variable level across these different systems, rather than doing it at the GUI level, but with pretty much the same intention that you're describing. So the weak assertion is that this system can save doctors time and reduce variation, and that's going to improve quality. But there's a strong assertion as well, which is that this is a good technological way of doing it, in particular in comparison with digging deeper into those systems and getting control of them at the element level rather than at the GUI level, putting it together. So weak assertion is really well proved. You've heard this question many times before. What's your answer when someone questions you about the strong assertion that it's a good way of doing it as well as a successful way of doing it?
Well, not every system has a backdoor that you can use. Not every system you can connect to via a backdoor. So for those legacy systems, in some ways you have to use RPA. And with RPA, I think, I mean, maybe I've proved it, maybe I haven't. People can take up the language, take up the code and build things themselves to make things work. And you need less access and permissions to get to the backdoor stuff. And I'm finding it very difficult to get IT to work with me on backdoor stuff and making things better interoperability wise. I don't think I have a very good answer to your question, though, about why RPA is better than the backdoor APIs and so on. But I think it's just an easier way to get things done quickly and accurately as well, until we have this perfect interoperability world in the NHS.
Thanks. That's a straight answer. We've got a question, are there any clinical risk management considerations? And then I tie to that the issue that does come up of, but what happens if someone, the next version, changes the location of an element of a screen or not? What could go wrong using this approach where you are relying on the GUI if the GUI isn't absolutely stable? So that's the specific question about changes beyond your control and how this model responds, and the wider question of clinical risk management when you intervene in this way.
I think these are very great questions. The first one specifically, but I think it applies to any new IT system. You need to make it safe. You need to test it. You need to debug it. You need to put it through its ropes and make sure it does what it should do. And no system's perfect, as we all know that when we've used any clinical system, they can crash and so on. But you need to be able to manage those errors. And I would say a quarter of my time is taken building a new program, and the rest of it, the 3/4, is taken just debugging the thing to make sure it runs properly and catches those bugs and safely handles them. And I have discussions about this sort of thing quite a bit, about how to make sure it's safe and so on. And yeah, we should probably have committees talking through about the safety aspects of this and present it and so on. And you know, this in its infancy, the quick spiritum at the moment, and you know, we've only just been using it in our department, but I'd love it to be used within our whole trust or in other trusts as well. And if we went to that sort of high level stuff, it would be useful to actually have those discussions about how to make this safe, and you know, get people involved with that as well. I think it's safe. And for example, when you're just getting data, you're not actually entering anything. So just grabbing data and showing it to. And the referrals, what we do at the moment is make sure the clinician that's done the referral, that's been emailed, is check your send box and check all the details are correct. So it's not doing anything more advanced than that, not playing with back-end databases and so on. Now, in terms of changes for your GUI, well, if you use a control name, that's fine. But if you use option 1 out of the 3 I gave, that you need to click at this position where the button should be, and it's moved, or then it won't work. Or if someone's changed the control name, which does happen with updates, but not that often from what I understand, it can cause problems. And I've come across that. And what I have built within Quick Spiritum is and when a bug happens, like a control's not there, it will flag it up to the user and say, do you want to email Mark Bailey this error? And this is how I've caught a lot of errors. I've had the end users actually help me debug it, which I find is really helpful. It might annoy them a bit that it didn't work, but next time it won't happen because I know about the bug, and I've got a long list of bugs that I've gone through and fixed this way. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks. Very interesting, because what you've taken us into is the issues of developing very close to the users, regardless of the particular technology. And you know, by my age, I know a lot of people who built systems in departments that were incredibly popular. And I don't know if you know, when people are bringing an EPR in, it's a joke amongst providers about which is harder, the people who've never computerized anything, or the people who have a departmental system that's been evolved to do exactly what they want. They're both problems when you come in with a new monolithic system.
Yeah.
So perhaps you could take us into those issues about, firstly, developing closer to users, and secondly, about organizational engagement when you suddenly pop up with something on your badge and you're producing information systems and people are using them. And what's that experience like?
So going back right to the beginning when you presented that I work 50%, 50% clinician, 50% informatician, I think that has lots of benefits to building a system, specifically being a clinician who codes, because I do the work every day. I know where the problems are. I know I can see how it could be improved. And so that gives me insight into how to build this program as well as possible. So I think from a developing point of view, and this is the age-old question of having clinicians deeply involved with new systems and talking with IT guys and having good communication with IT guys about what you need the system to do is important. But I think actually having someone that's actually at the front door doing these things, the work in terms of the clinical work and seeing what needs to be improved actually helps build better programs. And I've had quite a lot of positive feedback from my department with QuickSpirit and how it speeds things up. And I think most of the consultants now use QuickSpirit to do the referrals just because it's so much easier and so much quicker, because it grabs the patient's details. You just give it a hospital number. It'll grab the patient's details, their name, their date of birth, their address, their phone number, the GP details as well from our PAS system. You don't have to do anything, just give it a hospital number. It grabs that, puts it into the form, and then you just add a few extra details like they need this and that scan for this reason, and it sends off. And it's just so much quicker. You don't have to go around looking for a piece of paper. Now, in terms of the silo system that some clinician has built for a department for a specific need, and how IT or the trust, the organization views this is interesting. And I've had mixed discussions about it within my trust as well. And I think the trust, and maybe all trusts are trying to do this, is to have a single system sort of to control all the other systems, sort of a Tolkien view of one system to control them all. I think that's a great idea if it's possible. I don't know how easy that is. And this lung cancer pathways work that I'm starting on, we would very much like to incorporate as much as possible into our new Sunrise EPR. But there are quite a few people that are against you making silo programs. And I can understand because, for example, if I got run over by a bus tomorrow, who would fix it or who would know how to use it? Then you just need to make sure you train enough people in what it does and have good manuals and so on. But that's my viewpoint on that.
Thanks. I mean, the thing that's coming out to me as you say that is integrated care systems. Yep, this is going to get a lot of pressure. We know a lot of things break down. They're not going to have the choice of single monolithic systems that cover all of the organizations. That just isn't going to happen. And I wonder if you've been engaged on that one because there's no other option. You're going to have to do something like this to join up those systems. And then I don't know how much you've had the opportunity to look at the big county systems, Great North Care Record, Hampshire and Manchester, Leeds, and how much they're going towards building yet another database that's fed by everything that people look at, as opposed to enabling people to look at native systems. So how does this work beyond the level of the trust, and in particular in the settings of ICSs, which is where there's going to be so much action in the next 5 years?
I'm not sure I can comment too much on that because I haven't seen any of these big systems up in Manchester and so on, but I've heard of them, but I don't really know much about their functionality. As no, in Manchester, they were incorporating, as I said before, hyper-augmentation with RPA and machine learning and so on, which is very interesting stuff. But in terms of interoperability, yes, everything should be working together for better patient care, safe patient care. And, there's arguments for patients looking at their own records and having their records travel with them. There's other ways of looking at it, but using RPA to join up systems for the systems we have now, I think it is a good thing, as long as it's done carefully and safely and with as many people understanding as possible, which at the moment in my department is just me. But my clinical supervisor would like to be taught how to do RPA, so that would be an interesting little talk at some point. Maybe I can do that with other FCI members if they're interested, or anyone else that's interested. I could do an online talk on that. Yeah. Okay,
can I just get something in the chat, please, from people who'd be interested in a getting going in RPA session with Mark? Yep. And any comments on that one? Chat is open. Do you think that's feasible remotely? Mark, can you imagine running something like that?
Yeah, with screen sharing.
Yeah. You mean not Teams, but with something else we might be able to do it?
Teams or something else, yeah.
Yeah.
I can see it being possible. I'll look into that if there was enough interest.
Okay, if I type that, let's see what we get on the thumbs up. Yeah. Right. Okay. What haven't we touched on that you hoped you'd be asked about?
How to be a 50% clinician and informatician.
Yeah. Does it actually exist in your contract, or does it just work like that in practice?
Bit of both. It's I don't know, the NHS I don't think is ready for clinician who codes in terms of job description, job contracts, and so on. But I've got a fantastic department who have noticed what I can do and have given me the time and sort of space to do these things, and it's for their benefit as well. They're getting systems that speed up their work, that makes things safer, that makes things easier. And some very interesting stuff's coming off it. So, for example, the patient information video stuff, where we're at the moment sending patients SMS messages of videos that are available on YouTube and so on to help them with their disease. But we're going to be making our own videos as well for the department. For example, taking the patient through a bronchoscopy and what that is, actually walk them through to where the department is, walk them into the room virtually, and show them what it is, and try and relieve some angst through relation to that. And we're going to do that for the lung cancer pathways, probably an introductory video of the staffs and so on. It's very interesting work, it is. But in terms of how I got my job, I think I was very lucky. I stepped into the right department at the right time, and I can see a lot of people who've given career development talks discuss how it's difficult to get involved in anything informatics, clinical informatics. I think you have to be in the right place at the right time, unfortunately, at the moment, until there is a nice career path in clinical informatics with a CCT at the end.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're very interesting. I've counseled a lot of people to continue with their main job until they've got their feet under the desk, and then they can do what they actually want, and not to be open about it too early. I hope that with more competency work, that enables employers to find these ways of doing it using those building blocks. But there's absolutely no doubt that having a senior person who's giving you some space in order to do it can be really important. And I see that Andrew White agrees. Comment from Sarah: portfolio careers are more accessible to specialty doctors and associate specialists than to consultants. That's an interesting one. I've had my first students in Oxford who haven't even gone into F1 and F2 jobs and have got straight into consultancy and informatics, being confident that they can go back. That seems a lot more confidence than anyone had in the past. We were speaking yesterday to Topol fellows, and those fellowship schemes do provide a structured way of doing it, and there are those in the Northeast. But I hope that consultants will be leading on this and providing space for juniors, and it's a pity if they don't have enough space to do it for themselves, Sarah. Any more experiences in the chat of doing that? Which bit's good news, Sarah, please?
What you were saying about for the future and those coming up through the profession. Yep.
So those fellows, will have a catalytic effect, and maybe we need to share individual stories about how to do that, starting with Mark's, to give people the confidence to do it, the allies that you need. Be interesting to hear how deaneries look at that as well. But I think deaneries are much more tolerant to portfolio careers than anything we've seen in the past. Thank you. Okay, we're coming to an end. Any more direct questions, either about RPA or about building your own careers? Okay. Thank you, Mark. I've learned a lot on that, and in particular the bits I'm going to continue in the argument. This is going to be available. We'll keep it going on Discourse, and we've got some support for the hands-on session. And if we could build that up, it would be really great. Thank you very much for such an entertaining hour, entertaining and informative hour. Thank you, Mark.
That's right. Thank you very much.
Bye, folks.
Bye.